When I was still a graduate student living in Berkeley, my wife met Roberta Song, the second youngest daughter of Song Feiqing. And my wife kept telling me, you should talk to Roberta. Her father had all of these interesting things. And years went by, but eventually as I wound up the first book, I said, yeah, let's go talk to Roberta and find out about her father. And he was, at the time, so this would have been late 90s, best known in China as this kind of benevolent, red capitalist, an example perhaps for reform period capitalists, and had gotten a lot of press in China, a lot of work done on him, and I thought, well, that's interesting to find a man from the 1930s and 40s who had all of these benevolent policies towards his employees. Let me find out more about this. The book in essence is about capitalists and authoritarians or capitalists and authoritarian regimes in China's maybe long 20th century. One of the book's arguments is about the unevenness and unpredictability of Western imperialism and authoritarian regimes. And so by looking at one family with their companies, I see the nature of that variability, and I'm not forced to generalize needlessly. And we can see how some people are saved, some people are not. Some people cooperate, some people don't. And I think it gives us that kind of texture as well. Although the book begins with the story of Song Chuandian and his emergence from the Shandong countryside, fairly early in his life he falls afoul of political authorities and an order is put out for his arrest and he has to flee. And so the rest of the book, the bulk of the book, is about his son, Song Feiqing. Unlike his father, Song Feiqing is a product of the May 4th era. This is the period of years before and after 1919 when all kinds of foreign ideas are rushing into China and there is a sense of crisis. Chinese intellectuals and elites are turning to all kinds of ideas to think about how to save China from its disadvantageous position economically, politically, and potentially even culturally in relationship to the West. And much of the work that's been done by previous scholarship on this period focuses on philosophers and thinkers, writers, people like that. And one of the things my book does is, well, let's look at a business person who has the same kinds of influences, similar kinds of education, runs in the same kinds of circles. What does he take out of this kind of movement? And what it ends up is a combination of the desire to use business as the dynamic engine to reform and bring China's salvation, along with the idea that this will come along with modernity that is introduced somehow in a format that is not so much philosophical as it is everyday, having to do with the way the workers dress and their discipline, their punctuality, their skills, that there's a kind of a modernity here that is often left out in our accounts of this period. Industrial Eden is the phrase that I have coined to describe him and other people like him that believe in what I'm calling redemptive industrialization, that they can use modern industry as a way to redeem China. The nature of the Industrial Eden vision, or Song Feiqing's particular version of the Industrial Eden vision, is one that combines all kinds of elements, including scientific management, Taylorism, Fordism, things like that, as well as Christianity, the Golden Rule, which conveniently also comes from Confucius, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is the factory precept. And then there's a lot about it that sort of resonates with what we think of as neo-Confucian ideas of order, that there's a place for everything and everything in its place. And as long as you know your place in that system, everything is going to work out. And so there's a lot of emphasis on that. Outside the firm, he does present his products as hygienic, because this is a key word in the early 20th century, as modern and good and clean and wonderful. But maybe in the end his impact was greatest within the firm. And there's a chapter on Industrial Eden inside the firm. And this is a case where he tries to get his employees to be members of the modern community. And it requires them to dress in a certain way, to bow down to their superiors, to salute the company flag, to sing company songs, to partake in games and theater productions that the company is putting on, to do sports, to have their hair cut in the company barbershop or in the company beauty salon, to eat at the company cafeteria, and to listen to training lectures, spiritual training lectures that come from Song Feiqing himself. And they're modeled on ideas that Sun Yat-sen made popular and that we see in the nationalist movement and the nationalist army and places like that. But it's not just enough to come to these spiritual training lectures. The employees are then tested on their knowledge of the spiritual training lectures. And it's very much about sort of their active participation in the project of modernity. The book does follow him to his fairly early and tragic death, where he is kind of lost in visions of trying to create some sort of new utopia in South America or Hong Kong or someplace. But you know, we kind of wind up that story, but then the book shows the legacy of Song Feiqing and his father throughout the rest of the People's Republic of China. What really interested me about the narrative of business, and this is true for Song Feiqing, it's true for his supporters, and it's true for his opponents alike, not just in the 1930s and 1940s, but in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up to the present, is that the discussion of the role of business in society is a moral discussion. And I don't know if this is because of Confucianism and its sort of idea that everything is a moral judgment. I don't know if it's the nature of communism and the idea that they have to sort of save the world from capitalism. I don't know what it is. But you do not get, as he struggles and his opponents struggle over the control of the narrative of his life, you do not get the kind of triumphalist robber baron, Carnegie, Rockefeller kind of stories that we have. Everything is justified in terms of helping society, helping China, helping the nation, helping the world. And it is this moral discourse of capitalism that's going to be the topic of my next book.